Welcome to the Give for Grouse podcast, dedicated to giving the ruffed grouse a voice by promoting sound wildlife management, advocating for forest health, and championing all things conservation. Now let's get to the show with Cody Altizer and Eric Long. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Give for Grouse podcast. I'm Eric Long. My brother down in Virginia, Mr. Cody Altizer. How's Cody today?
Cody is right as rain. You sound a little sleepy.
I am sleepy.
Is it nap time?
Well, you're cutting into it. I just want to let you know that.
We'll make it quick then. I can't deprive Eric of his nap.
You don't. It's like there's hangry people, then there's sleepy Eric. You don't know which one you want. I am at that age where I'm sleepy. Always sleepy.
We all.
It could be my diet, no exercise, but nah, it's not that. Can't be that, right?
Yeah. We all could do well with a little nap every now and then.
Right? That's for sure. But no, last episode, Cody, that was phenomenal. That was so good. Mark Wiley, he was a rock star.
Yeah.
And today we have Mike Dye from your state.
Yeah, fellow Virginian Mike Dye. He is a Forest Game Bird Biologist from my home state of Virginia. And we had Mike on the Deer Hunter podcast way back when, a few years ago. And it was enlightening way back when. I remember that podcast. That was one of my favorites personally. I think one of the best we'd ever done. Mike was a wealth of knowledge. You just referenced Ruffed Grouse and Ruffed Grouse management. So I'm hoping today will follow suit.
Yeah, I'm fashion. Sure it will.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's going to be exciting hearing, his version of what the status of the Ruffed Grouse is in your state, and that kind of covers, Appalachia in general and stuff. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if there's any connection between the two states of where the grouse are, what's the habitat, and how do you fix this and stuff. It's going to be interesting to see if there is some, likeness to it.
Some similarities. What I think is interesting is it's the same bird, more or less. Like it's an Appalachian grouse, but Ohio, where you're at, East Central, Southeast, similar to where I'm at, same bird, similar, but also very different. Like I'm in the mountains, and I mean you're in timber country, but you're not in the mountains. So, I think I'm curious too if there's any similarities. Are they doing better? Are they doing worse? Be some certain crossover for sure. Some certain differences in management, population, this, that, and the other as well. So, that's what's really cool about what we're doing in Appalachian grouse, especially. Same bird, but varying habitats and environments from Ohio to Virginia, North Carolina, everywhere in between.
Yeah, I'm sure there's it's going to be pretty similar. You have the politics of it, you have the timber aspect of it, and I think we're going to, no matter what guests we have on us, I'm sure it's going to be the same narrative, but it's going to be good to hear their perspective of it and how to solve the problem. The situation that the Ruffed Grouse are in and what we could possibly do to help that along, move the needle.
That's what we exist for. We're making a big pot of grouse solution stew. Big pot, a dash of Mark Wiley, a sprinkle of Mike Dye.
Yeah.
Really shaking in the Give for Grouse and Cody and Eric. Put a heavy dose of that. And at the end of it, we'll have
bad eyelashes.
I have the solution, Hocus pocus and wave our magic wand.
No, every little bit counts, and every time we have somebody very knowledgeable on, helps us do our job a lot better. I do know that for a fact. So, it's gonna be exciting.
Yep, well, bring him on in. All right, Mr. Mike Dye, how are you doing this afternoon, Mike?
Doing pretty good. Glad to be here and have another conversation about grouse.
Absolutely. Mike is as we mentioned in the introduction, Mike is Virginia's Forest Game Bird Biologist. And I'll give the floor to you, Mike, to introduce yourself, what you do, who you are, where you came from, quick and dirty of it all. But I imagine you got your hands involved here in Virginia and turkeys, ruffed grouse, obviously, and a little bit of all those forest game birds. But the floor is yours, my friend. Who is Mike Dye?
Yeah, so I am the Forest Game Bird Biologist, so cover turkey and grouse specifically. So that's that covers kind of research, monitoring, all that jazz. Working through our management plan for wild turkey. We just wrapped that up this past year, and so hopefully that opens up some more time to work on some more grouse management this coming year. At least that's kind of the goal that we've set out to do this year. But yeah, so originally from Southern West Virginia, grew up, kind of rural lifestyle, hunting and fishing. That was kind of the name of the game, and kind of decided that was the career path for me. So here I am, however many years later that is, and just glad to be getting paid to do what I do most days. And of course, there are the office days that every job has office days, right? You got to sit there and do the paperwork and computer work and all that. But that's the price you have to pay to do the fun jobs, I guess, too.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this?
So I have been with the department for about 18 years. So I worked about 14 years as a district wildlife biologist, kind of here in the central Piedmont of Virginia, which, that general district biologist is, everything from bear management to deer to turkeys to, small game, whatever comes up. And then I've been in this position since 2021, I think.
Oh, okay. Are you based out of what, Richmond or?
So I'm based out of Louisa County. So I have just a kind of a satellite office that I work out of, and so luckily I don't have to go into headquarters every day. That's a great thing. Get to avoid some of that mess.
Oh gosh,
Yeah. Can't imagine.
No.
Can't imagine. I can't imagine. I can't. Oh, that's sure. Yeah. Go ahead, Cody.
No, go ahead.
No, so you said you worked some of the projects, or you might be getting back into doing some grouse management stuff like that. And what are some of the things that you're currently working on or proposal?
Yeah, so everything right now is kind of still in proposal state, and there's some potential for some more funding to come here shortly, and we're kind of got our fingers crossed that some of that works out. One of the big things I think we're looking at right now is looking at developing some habitat models and kind of prioritization models for grouse specifically. So kind of looking at, okay, where do we have the potential for better grouse management, and where does the landscape suited to that management, so we can not just go out and just do random acts of conservation, but really focus and target our work to where we have the idea that we're going to have more success in those areas. And then, once we have success in those areas, we can kind of build it out. Mark Puckett, who's our former quail biologist or small game biologist, retired a couple of years ago, but he used to talk about, the concept of a quail quilt. So basically, you've got this patch of habitat, and you think about them like the squares on a patchwork quilt, and you start connecting those squares. And that's kind of the hope of, I think, where I would like to see us go with that is, let's focus on where we have the best habitat, where we have grouse right now, and then let's start building those quilt squares out, and start moving, kind of moving that conservation needle, and expanding the size of that block of habitat that we have.
Mm-hmm. Are you having some success with all that? I mean,
not really. It's like I said, it's still, we're still in the early stages trying to get some of the things off the ground. There's some potential for some funding to come in, and hopefully, if that happens, we can move on a little bit faster. But all of it kind of depends on how that moves.
Yeah,
it's exciting. Sounds like a very intentional game plan. I like how it sounds, and I like how you put it, that you're being intentional with the management plan, and not just doing, as you said, random acts of conservation, which may look good, sound good, make us feel good. But are they actually moving the needle and helping the species?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that's so Ruffed Grouse Society right now, they've been working on they call theirs I'm just blanking on the name here. The defined forest management blocks, or diversified forest management blocks, something like that. But anyway, what they're doing is kind of that same mentality of, we're going to work in this area. These are the practices we want to employ, and just kind of that real focused attitude of, okay, we can't do this everywhere. We don't have the funds to do it everywhere, but let's focus our efforts and let's put, the effort where we can and really kind of make that bigger impact and that bigger footprint, where it's feasible to do it.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Sounds good. I'll get right into it, Mike. Speaking to the state of Virginia, how would you say ruffed grouse are doing in the state of Virginia? Scale of 1 to 10, give us a grade. How would you answer ruffed grouse in the state of Virginia?
Scale of 1 to 10. Probably 3.5 to 4, maybe.
It's an honest answer. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen considerable range contraction over the last, 20 to 30 years. Mm-hmm. And, it's where I'm at here in Louisa County. We used to have grouse here in Louisa County. They were, somewhat rare, even back in the 1980s, but they were here. And we talked to hunters all the time that encountered them. Now, I have to drive, I'd have to drive at least an hour to the west to find grouse. So really, the Blue Ridge is kind of the last, real area we have grouse. There are some along the east slope of the Blue Ridge, but, those are, again, few and far in between. And then getting into Western Virginia, that's where we really have more grouse. And again, it depends on the area that you're in. Of course, the Shenandoah Valley, those wide open expanses of farm fields, that's, pretty devoid of grouse there. But you get into the higher elevation mountains, the grouse are doing a little bit better there. And again, it's highly variable depending on the area that you're in. Some of the higher elevation areas, we are seeing a little bit better success on our grouse right now. You get into some of the lower elevation areas, there's maybe a little bit more scattered reports. Southwest Virginia, it's kind of hit and miss. So there's some pockets where they seem to be doing really well, and some pockets where they're not doing all that well. So it just, again, depends on where you are. I would say over the last 2 to 3 years, we have had a little bit of I don't know if you want to call it a little bit of bump in success. So we've had a couple good mast years stacked together, especially in the Appalachian Highland area. So, look at, Highland County, Bath County, Allegheny, Rockbridge, Augusta, kind of that core area there. We've had really good mast crops, especially in that area. And we think that really has helped some grouse along in those areas the last few years. I think we talked about last time I was on here, the Appalachian Grouse Project really kind of highlighted the importance of oak mast in particular for our Appalachian grouse. So, having those couple years stacked together of good mast years, I think is extremely beneficial. It seems to have made a bit of a difference. We hear from time to time some grouse hunters reporting some really good days, but for the most part, it's still,
yeah.
It gives me just a little bit of optimism. I think that we do hear from time to time. A grouse hunter will tell me, hey, I saw 10 grouse on my hunt today, or flushed 10 grouse on my hunt today. But those are rarities. Those aren't the standard comments that we get. It's most of the comments that we get is I walked 8 or 9 miles, bumped 1 bird or 2 birds. So they are still here. There are pockets where there are more birds, definitely, and it's just a matter of hopefully being able to make those pockets where there are birds more plentiful. So
yeah, what's amazing when I head down to visit Cody and film and work and have fun down there, it's funny, like he'll say, hey, this is where I seen a grouse, or this guy sent me a picture of where this grouse was. And one spot in particular, unfortunately, Cody and I were riding together and we hit a deer, and it's just like a state park looking area. And he said, yeah, I saw a grouse here the other day. And I was like, this is like, you're looking around going, there is zero reason for this grouse to be here. Mm-hmm. And that's this thing. It's like it's funny when you go head down to Virginia, it seems just, through Cody and I's conversation and just observation, I can't do that in Ohio. It's like you guys have more birds than we do in the state of Ohio, and it's like, there's like, you're looking around going, why? Why?
Yeah, yeah, and you wonder, are some of those birds just kind of
Yeah.
moving from one area to another, the kind of transient birds,
Yeah.
or is there something there that they're able to make a living off of? And
Yeah.
we get that from time to time. We have one management area in particular that the guys out there kept telling me, I see grouse every time, right in this area, and you drive out there and you're like, why? There's no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is exact opposite of what we say
Yeah.
we want to manage for, and this is where we're finding grouse. And so I guess they have a mind of their own. They have an eye for things that we can't see, I guess.
Yeah.
And here in kind of, I think in the Appalachians in general, the laurel thickets and the rhododendron thickets play such an important role, and I think we probably underestimate the importance of that from a cover standpoint. And I think there's that's probably one of the things that we misestimate how important they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've often wondered that. I mean, you hear stories of, and it looks grousey. You see pictures of grouse hunters in that laurel, and I've always wondered, what, just how beneficial they are. Because, gosh, I mean, it's almost impenetrable at places. But to kind of echo what you said, I'm a much smaller scale, and it's purely anecdotal. But the last 2 or 3 years, just as you've said, and it could be, is a coincidental or causation, who knows? But I've seen more than I had the previous 2 or 3 years. And so there's reason for optimism there. And just in my travels, I do a lot of real estate photography for, recreational properties around here. And whenever I go to a larger acre tract, I'm always in the ear with the landowner, buyer or seller who, about grouse, you see grouse, you hear grouse, this, that, and the other. And again, is it coincidence or correlation? Or maybe just because I have my eyes and ears open to it more now than I did the previous 5 years, but they seem to be around more than what I initially had thought. If we were to have this conversation 5 years ago, which we almost did, I'd have been, clock's ticking, we're running out of time. What I have seen, and again, I'm just Cody out and about, but I'm more optimistic now than I was 2-3 years ago. Take that for what it's worth. Or is that something that you guys have seen and that you could back with any of your observations or research or anything?
Yeah, so really the two main monitoring methods that we have, we do a drumming survey every year, and that's basically staff going out, and we have these set routes that they drive. That listen for turkeys and grouse drumming. Those routes have been pretty consistent. We've had a few years where they've kind of dipped down a little bit. Most of those dips, I think, are explained by some just staff vacancies and a few routes just not being run. But for the most part, that seems to be holding pretty steady. And I think that's probably our most accurate assessment of our grouse populations that we really have. The other real assessment is our grouse hunter flush rate. So we ask, grouse hunters that are out there hunting, hey, how many grouse did you flush today? And we ask, every flush that they have, whether it's a, reflush or just a, unique individual, we ask them to count all flushes. And that gives us kind of a flush per hour of hunted. So we know, how many birds they're encountering. And we've been doing that since the 1970s, I think 1972 or something. So, over 50 years worth of data in that data set. And the last 2 years, we have seen a little bit of a bump up. So we're kind of back into where we were in the, 2008 to 2010 kind of time frame. So we went through, a pretty low period there, and we've bounced back up just that little bit. Now, I will say the data or the sample size for that data is getting a little small. Don't have as many hunters cooperating with that survey as we once did. And, so because there's fewer people feeding into that data set, one guy that has a really good season can really skew the results. So that's kind of, I've taken that with a little bit of grain of salt. I think there probably is a little bit of an improvement, but I don't know that it's as dramatic as what our data is currently showing.
Yeah. I've ran some of those grouse and turkey surveys, and what's frustrating is when you go to the following year, you go to that site, 10 or site 12, and to listen, and there's a house now.
Yeah.
there's a business there now. Same
Yep.
thing with
Yep.
woodcock surveys that you do. You go there and there's a industrial park there now. You know,
Yep. Yep.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
yeah. It was a funny story to get sidetracked here, but it's a story worth telling. I remember in college we were helping the Division of Wildlife do a gobbling survey, and the bus picked us up, the wildlife management class, dropped us off in pairs, and it was funny. Then they looped around and picked everybody up, and everybody, maybe 5 birds gobbled, different birds gobbled. Next group, maybe 6. Next group, maybe 2. And you had to count how many gobbles you were. And we picked up these one guys, and they were like, "Oh, dude, we we heard like I don't know, let's just say 4 birds, but there was like 100 gobbles," and we're like, "What in the hell?" They were calling to them. They didn't know you were supposed to call to them. Yeah, we had like 100 gobbles. I was like,
Yep.
What? So there goes that research. Yeah,
That's right. That's right.
That's
Yeah, you were talking about the houses on the routes, on survey routes. I had a woodcock survey route that was kind of that way up here in Culpeper. I'd run it for years, and then I go out there and look at it, and it wound up being, I think it was 7 of the 10 stops. I think there's 10 stops on the survey route. 7 of the 10 I was parking in somebody's driveway. And of course, never heard of woodcock on there. So I finally wrote, the administrator of that survey. I was like, hey, we gotta look at this survey route, because it's not giving us what we need.
Yeah. You're constantly.
Of course, those zero routes are important. We need to know those changes too. But at the same time, as a staff member going out and taking your time, to go out and do the surveys, it's a little frustrating.
Yeah. This is a pretty, it's a generic question, but bear with me because I think we all know the answer to it, but we still have to ask it. I mean, what is some of the biggest things that's going on in Virginia that's the cause of the grouse, decline? I mean, again, we all know the answer, but just to say it out loud.
Yeah, just a lack of forest management right now. I think that's that's the one thing that we can't overlook. I mean, it has changed so much, and you talk to hunters, and I think that's one of the biggest things. You talk to these hunters, and they're like, it hasn't changed. There's still forest management. I still see people out cutting timber. I'm still finding clear cuts, and there's habitat there. The birds just aren't. But if you really look at it from a data perspective, there's not nearly as much. So we dug into a little bit of the forest inventory and analysis data. So this is a Forest Service program that's run through the state. So they basically have survey plots that they put out all across the state. Actually, it's I think nationwide, but they the Virginia Department of Forestry administers it here in the state. And they have these survey plots that they go out and evaluate every year. So wherever that plot lies, they go out and measure. Is it closed canopy forest? Is it clear cut? Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. They go in and measure everything. So they're measuring stand age, species composition, the whole nine yards. So we dug into a little bit of that. And so if you look at the amount of 0 to 5 year age class timber in Virginia, and if you look at 2001, which most of our grouse hunters will tell you that was kind of the last really good year that we had in Virginia. So 2001, we had just under 200,000 acres of that 0 to 5 year age class timber in the west of the Blue Ridge. So just looking west of the Blue Ridge. If you take that out to 2021, so 20 years later, we're less than 100,000 acres of that same timber class. So we have cut the amount of that habitat by 50%. And similarly, if you look at the grouse flush rate, it kind of follows right along with that line that we see. So to me, it's definitely a habitat problem. I think there are some other issues. Don't get me wrong. I think there are plenty of other issues to evaluate, but I think habitat is the main linchpin, the main driver. Yeah. And so we talk about kind of that quail quilt concept, and I think it's working in reverse right now. So we have these islands of habitat, and these islands are getting further and further apart. And so the problem is that sometimes these islands aren't connected. sometimes they are connected, but it's unsuitable habitat in between.
Yeah.
Or maybe not unsuitable, but more dangerous for the birds. So it's more open, more of that open, understory forest that they can move through it. They can see predators, but they can get picked off really easy as well.
Yeah.
So,
but not to interrupt your thought, but it's funny you said went from, correct me if I'm wrong, 200,000 to 100,000.
Yeah.
And it was funny talking to Mark on the last episode. He was, and Cody, oh geez, I'm going to butcher this. It went from 1968. It was roughly, I forget how many thousands of acres it was of young forest, and today it's 800,000, and it's basically a 3 million acre drop. Am I correct in that, Cody? I think that's pretty much the sum of it.
Yeah, say 1970. It was 3 point. They said, he mentioned the same thing that FIA inventory in 1970 for conversation was 3.7 million acres of young forest, and then now less than 800,000. And what was interesting to me, stood out to me, was the state of Ohio only had 8 million acres total of forested acres.
Yeah.
So in 1970, almost half of the state's forested acres was young forest.
Yeah.
Which is, right. I mean, imagine the habitat. And then of course, it's similar to the numbers you just quoted, Mike. I mean, it shrinks. And I mean, there's a correlation when there's a lot of young forest, there's a lot of grouse, and as those numbers shrink, they shrink together.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And that's something we've not been good at telling that story. We've not been good at telling, how much change has occurred. We're getting a little better with telling some of the stories on, with these populations, but we're not good with the habitat component. So helping people understand that, in 20 years, we've changed the dynamics of, the young forest in the western half of the state dramatically. And it's not being told anywhere. That's a story that's not getting out there.
Yeah, that seems to be like just what little bit of conversation we've had, and especially with Mark Wiley, is that the story, like hearing those numbers from Mark for the first time, and then hearing what you had to say just a little bit ago, and then you said, we're not good at necessarily telling our story. And it's like, man, these are the things that we need to get out there to help maybe wake up people, like with the rough grouse situation. And then, the grouse is, the leader of they're the poster child of it, and all the trickle down species below that. But man, it's just, that seems to be, logging is the issue. Maybe West Nile, maybe the best management practices of loggers, that create West Nile, mud puddles, if you will, and stuff like that, but it's, again, it kind of goes back to us not telling the story, I mean, I don't know, that wasn't necessarily a question, but it just seems like, that seems to be the little narrative here. It's like, wait.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and it's hard to tell that story because, we're seeing declines in some species, but we're seeing increases in others, and, so there's give and take, and, we don't want to go out there and say we need to cut everything, because, that's not the case. Even grouse need that older, more mature forest. So kind of tempering what we say and how we say it, I think is important, and kind of nuancing that message. That there's value in all different forest types, and I think that's the key to moving forward is understanding that diversity. We understand the concept of diversity in so many other ways, but understanding diversity within our forest management system, I think, is very important.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you: do you guys work like alongside with I'll just call it Division of Forestry? I mean, do you guys in your specific job? I mean, are you working hand in hand with them on a lot of these projects?
Yeah, so not as much at my level. I know like the local district biologists are working with them, pretty regularly, or especially our WMA folks. I think they talk to them pretty regularly as well. But yeah, so there's a good amount of overlap of kind of what they're looking at and what we're looking at, and especially here in Virginia, the Department of Forestry, within the last few years ago, implemented a hardwood initiative. So basically, they're seeing the decline in white oak trees. They're seeing a decline in a lot of our oak species, and so they're really trying to bolster this idea of, okay, we need to be doing more management to promote these oak species because we're losing them. And they're looking at it from the forest management side of it. They're looking at it from the timber production standpoint. But it ties in perfectly with the habitat side that we're looking at, and the changes in mast over time. As these trees get older, they get more crowded, mass production decreases, and all these things kind of play in together. So really, I think a lot of the efforts that they're undertaking very closely mirror what we would want to be doing as well. And so we have worked with them a little bit. And I think there's room for us to kind of marry those messages together a little bit more. And it's just a matter of getting the right people in the right room at the same time, and kind of talking about it.
Yeah. How about on a federal level? I know when I drive down to Cody's, you got George Washington, Jeff, the state park looking woods and stuff like that. I mean, how are they to work with?
Yeah, so they're great to work with. I mean, we've got some pretty decent relationships with them. And as with all things, it could always be better, but we do work with them a fair amount. They have some real strong interest in doing things. And I think that's where I hope in the near future we're going to see some changes, I think, on some of that.
Oh, great.
I think there might be some more management coming online in the next couple of years. So I'm optimistic on that. It's one of the few places of optimism, I think, moving forward.
But that would be huge. Not to interrupt you, but that would be oh huge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even
absolutely.
You would want the whole kit and caboodle, but just even a fraction of it, the benefit. My God, that is.
Yeah, and so that the Forest Service, they there's always the restrictions, right? They have a lot of restrictions placed on them because it is a multiple use landscape. So it's not just timber management, it's not just wildlife management, it's the recreation, it's the view sheds, it's all of that has to be considered.
Yeah.
So that that does kind of make it a little bit more challenging, but they're very interested in fire management. They've done a lot with their prescribed burning. And they can do things with their prescribed burning that they can't do in a timber management situation. So they may not be able to do that traditional, here's a clear cut, but they can do some prescribed fire that can have very similar impacts. So it's maybe just not necessarily just they can't do this, but sometimes it's just kind of reframing the way we talk about it and what the benefit is.
Yeah.
One question I wanted to ask you, Mike, is about fire and its utility to grouse. And I think that's a good segue because, the end goal, we all agree, we all want more grouse, whether it's accomplished through cutting timber or fire. Quail is the firebird. It seems like using prescribed fire to accomplish grouse habitat is more difficult, but it definitely has utility. So I'm curious because I know they do quite a bit of burning across the mountain here in Hidden Valley, in Augusta County. I always see there's a lot of burns going on around Bath, Highland, Augusta County. What response does that do, if any, for grouse? Especially because what type of timber, what type of burns are they doing? Because for grouse, it seems like fire, from my perspective, it's most effective in keeping that habitat kind of in arrested succession. Once you do a clear cut and it maybe starts to age out a young forest, then you can run a fire through it and then it sets it back a little bit. But if it's a mature closed canopy, are you just really burning leaf litter? If you're burning early successional, you're keeping it in early successional. So based on what I've read in the ACGRP, fire is absolutely a management tool for grouse. When I think of fire, I think more of turkeys and quail. And I've always been curious, how the state or how a private landowner can use fire to manage for grouse. And then from a public standpoint, again, how it gets done, we really don't care. We want the timber value because of the economic force and it's the trickle down effect there. But if we can create grouse habitat with cutting timber or using fire, I don't care how it gets done. Let's just do it. And it seems like fire is more accepted publicly from non-consumers than, they would maybe lean more towards that versus timber cutting.
Mike,
that was several questions into one.
Yeah. Mike, before you answer that, why Cody's so excited about burning is because he took his burn manager thing and he got 90 something 94 on it. So
don't want to brag,
if you need some burning done,
I'm basically an expert.
He is the guy. He was quick to tell me that he scored higher than I ever have, and I have enough training where I
is that still an open book test now, or is that?
Well,
I think it was
online. And I missed the very first question, and the first question was about legality, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
Okay,
I was take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. But with that being said, we'll get back to the answering the question. Is I have enough training where I could have my own crew out west. That's just like with Cody. Even though I'm allowed to do it and could do it, doesn't mean I should. But I'm sorry to interrupt the train.
No. I think that's a good way to start. I guess start the answer here is so I think private land management. I think the future of fire on private lands is probably going to be kind of landscape cooperatives. So landowners helping landowners. So that's a concept that it's more popular, I think, in the quail world. But I think we need to be expanding it out, talking about it in the turkeys and deer and grouse and pretty much everything else, kind of managing these landscapes cooperatively. So you're not just, kind of one landowner doing one thing, but maybe you've got several landowners in an area that, hey, we've got a similar goal, similar mindset. Let's work on this together. I think that's the future for that private land component of it. The public land, you're absolutely right. I mean, that is, fire tends to be the most publicly accepted because it is that natural or mimicking that natural response that would have been on the landscape. So if you think about, historically, there would have been fire in the mountains. It would have occurred at, whatever interval, and they've done some research on that. And so, that component of it, I think is that just that more publicly accepted concept. And so we can get a lot of the benefit that we would normally see from the traditional logging and traditional, forest management through these fires. It's a lot less selective, so we can't control it as much. It really depends on the fire intensity and how the fire is set up. And, we can mitigate, some of the mortality events, some of it we can't. Some of it, those fires just, sometimes they're going to get hotter than you intend. Sometimes they're not going to burn as hot as you intend. So it just depends on that individual fire and what's going on that particular day. So one of the things that, from a fire management standpoint, I think, especially on public land, there's a real focus on oak forest management and oak regeneration. And, we all know that, we've learned through research that, that fire is very good for regenerating oak stands because of their growth pattern. So they're going to put more growth into that root system, whereas, your poplars and some of your other species are going to be putting more into just vertical growth. So they're more equipped, more adapted to that fire regime. And so you can basically replenish your oak forest in a quicker way, in a better way in through that fire regime. The problem with that is those tend to be on a lot of those drier sites. And so we don't see as much of kind of the plant response that we might want for grouse in some of those burn units. So they tend to be south-facing slopes, south and west-facing slopes, and you're not going to get, at quite as much of your grapes and your some of your viburnums and dogwoods and things like that. You may get some response, but you're not going to get as much response as you might in some of the more maybe those east slopes or the north facing slopes. So that's where fire I think has some tremendous benefit, but there's also some limitations to it and what it can do for grouse. So I think the ideal is coupling kind of the fire management and the forest management together. And I think that's where we get the best bang for our buck, and really can start seeing some big impacts. The other issue that I guess, I don't necessarily call it an issue, but the item with fire is your return interval. So if your return interval, basically you burn through an area, and the length of time between the next burn that's kind of considered your return interval. You guys know this, but so if that return interval is too short, it can be detrimental to grouse, because you get it to the spot where it's almost beneficial to grouse, and then you burn it again, and it kind of resets back to zero. So you think about those grouse, they're really liking that, those forests that are going to be in that 8 to 15 year age class. They like that, they don't like it real thick. They want to be able to see and be able to kind of see what's going on around them. And in those thick, fresh clear cuts and, 2 and 3 year old clear cuts, or 2 and 3 year old burns, they may not be able to visually see as well. So they prefer that to be a little bit older. And I think that's one of the things, one of the criticisms of some of our burning that we do is I think we often come back in too soon, and we burn too frequently.
That's
at least from a grouse perspective.
You look puzzled.
No, I'm just trying to. You're talking about me, right?
Yeah.
Mike looks like he knows what he's doing. Yeah, that he had me over here just trying to comprehend what you're saying.
So what he described, Eric, is what we've been doing with those patch clear cuts. I mean, hindsight's 2020. There's a part of our property, Mike. It was up on the mountain. You didn't get to see it when you came over, but we had some little patch clear cuts done 5 years ago, and we executed our plan 5 years ago, which was to do the patch clear cuts and to burn them on a 2 or 3 year rotation. Since then, we've accumulated some more land, and where those patch clear cuts are, dedicating it more to grouse. So, throughout all of it, Eric and I kind of had the light bulb went off. Is like, was our burns detrimental to grouse? Yes, but that's just hindsight. I mean, the burns accomplished our initial management objectives, but that's something I'm glad you said, because it was a question I kind of wanted to frame. Is so many people these days are burn happy, which is a positive trend. Prescribed fire is more accepted and more easily accomplished. More landowners are doing it all across the board. It's a really positive thing. But for grouse, it can be a really detrimental thing, because as you mentioned, we talked about in one of our previous episodes, one of the key components of grouse habitat is patience. Like, you can't, a clear cut for deer and turkeys and other songbirds, or even quail. I mean, even within 6 months, it's beneficial. But for grouse, you got to cut it. And realistically, year 4 or 5, maybe at the earliest. That's not to say they won't, the hen won't take the chicks out there to brood. It's not to say it doesn't have utility, but before it gets really, truly grousey and into that young forest, you gotta wait, and fire does nothing to help you accomplish that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that the patience part of it is hard. I'm a instant gratification. I got the attention span of a gnat. So, that's one of the things I like about quail management is you can cut it in like 3 months. There's going to be quail coming into it. But for the grouse, they do need that longer time frame. Now, so, when we're talking about burning, different species like different things, so turkeys are going to benefit greatly from that 3 to 5 year rotation. Deer are going to benefit greatly from that quicker rotation. Quail, they even like, I think, Tall Timbers does about an 18-month rotation, so if you're burning on, that intensity, different species like different things. And for grouse in particular, you just want that longer window. And that's, again, that diversity on the landscape. And, maybe some of the burns maybe let go a little bit longer. Some of the burns maybe keep them a little tighter. But I think that's one thing that, if somebody gave me a magic wand and, allowed me to make some decisions, that would be one of the things is, hey, we may come in and burn this on a 2 year rotation for a couple times, and then we may extend it out 10 years. It just kind of keep that diversity and shooting for different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned magic wand. If you had a magic wand, and we asked Mark this, and it might be a question for a lot of our guests. If you were, without getting yourself in a predicament at work, if you were the person, okay, if you were the person to make decisions on the rough grouse, you know what I mean by that, is like, what would you do? Like, what are some of the things that you would love to be a part of, and maybe some directional changes for the rough grouse species itself?
Yeah, I mean, for the species itself, I think it's just so hard to answer that. But from the regional scale, from the statewide perspective, I think from a statewide perspective, I think we need to work closer with both the Virginia Department of Forestry and the U.S. Forest Service on messaging. Because I think that's where we're losing the battle right now. I mean, to be 100% honest, we're losing the messaging battle because there are so many people that are out there fighting for, preservation of all forest land. And that's, their view is that, if you clear cut it, it's no longer forest, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, we come at it from the perspective of, yeah, you clear cut it, it's still forest. It's just a young forest. You're just resetting that forest.
Mm-hmm.
You're just resetting that clock and that timeline on it. But I think that's the big thing, that if I could do anything, I think it would be to really improve that messaging and really work on, how we're educating people and understanding, what it is we're trying to accomplish. We don't want to be putting loggers in the woods just to, rape and pillage the land, and, like was done in, the early 1900s. What happened in kind of that the Industrial Revolution period was not good forest management.
Mm-hmm.
And we're, now we're having to live with some of the side effects of the way it was managed. And we need to go in and do some intelligent management. And we have the resources, we have the know-how to do it. It's just a matter of getting the social buy-in to do it.
Yeah, and your answer, Cody, am I wrong? I mean, it was almost similar to what Mark was saying. It's the narrative, right? I mean, so this actually question kind of goes to both of you. It's funny, we were just talking about burning, and Cody mentioned just a little bit ago how it's a little bit more accepted. Where 10 years ago, which is not a long time ago, like in the deer management world, we started burning, and it was like, oh my God, taboo. People would drive by and they'd call the fire department on you and all this stuff. And you did everything legally. Statewide, you would sit there and do a control burn on some warm season grasses, and they were calling the district office and all this stuff. Now people are stopping, taking pictures, wanting to be a part of it, or people wanting to learn more about it. Is it more accepted? And again, the answer, it goes back to what you were saying, how you answer the question. It's the narrative, it's the messaging. Who's to say that we can't do this with cuts? Wise use cuts. Like, I remember when I started a quality deer management branch in Ohio, and we were concentrating on the Amish community because they're a big deer hunting community. And I remember saying, hey, we're going to start these QDM co-ops. And I remember so many people like, this can't work. These people can't read. They can't write. They don't take showers. The whole 9 yards. And now it's one of the biggest things in the state. You can't say it can't be done until you do it, And the answer, it goes to both of you. I mean, who's to say that we can't change this? It's just, again, doing it and promoting it.
I think, I'll let Mike speak to a bigger landscape scale. On a private landowner scale in the Allegheny Highlands, Eric, you and I have talked about this. I mean, it is pretty widely accepted to cut timber. For a variety of reasons, financial and especially habitat. We're very fortunate here to have the paper mill, the hardwood pulp and paper mill in Covington. And Eric and I have talked about this, Mike, that, most of the people around here, I would love to know a percentage, actually, now that I think about it, who's cutting for wildlife and who's cutting for a financial return. The people, I think it's a very relatively high percentage of people cutting timber are cutting for wildlife. The idea of doing a clear cut to see more deer and turkeys is widely accepted around here. We're able to do that because you don't really necessarily have to cut high quality timber to do it. Most of that pulpwood can go to the mill. So, to answer your question, Eric, neighbors around me that you've seen, Eric, when you're down here, you see pulpwood trucks going up and down the road all the time. I'd say a good portion of that, most people are double dipping for financial return in wildlife, but it's widely accepted around here to cut timber for wildlife. On a landscape scale, I'll let Mike answer that, but.
Well, and I would say, the part of that is, people see the benefits. So it only takes one or two landowners in an area going in and doing a timber sale and doing some timber management for the neighbors to start seeing the benefits and to be like, all of a sudden, hey, I'm seeing deer here like I haven't seen in years. I'm seeing turkeys. I'm seeing, more bear or whatever. So it just takes one or two landowners to be able to start that needle moving and people start seeing the benefits. And I think, it's more, I think it's less the people that live in and around the system that don't understand it. It's the people that are removed from the national forest that don't look at it every day. They're going there on the weekend, or they're going there, for a week in the summer. I think they're the ones that we really have to be convincing. It's not so much the people that live in the community, because I think they see the benefit. They understand what forest management can do for the wildlife. They understand what it can do for the forest, from the, the fire management standpoint. They understand all that, but it's more the people that live remotely that are dealing, they're looking at it from a different perspective. I think those are the ones that we really need to reach. Those are the ones that, are going to be writing the letters to the, Forest Service office to complain when there's a timber sale being done.
I think a big part of that messaging, and we kind of talked a little bit about it with Mark, the three of us, we understand, with wildlife optics, deer management, turkey management, grouse management, we understand that it's management for the species, but the non-consumptive community hears that and they think we want to do it so we can see more, kill more. Yes and no, that's part of it, but we kind of, instead of putting a species to it, grouse are 100% a game bird. I don't think of them as a game bird for whatever reason, whatever that says about me. I'll let you guys decide.
It says a lot, Cody, but anyway.
I'm hardly a hunter, I swear. But forest management and then timber cutting for healthy forests. Eric's mentioned that before, because we've talked about, you could have phenomenal ruffed grouse habitat, but just because you have grouse habitat, if they're not in the neighborhood, there's no guarantee you're going to have grouse, but you can have a healthy forest. A healthy forest is something that everybody can get behind or would want, even if you live in downtown Richmond and have never set foot in the woods or on national forest or in the outdoors. You want a healthy forest. So I think, that's part of the messaging, is advocating for healthy forests. But we asked Mark this too, and I'll ask you, Mike. It's a question we're going to ask everybody moving forward. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but putting you on the spot might put some pressure on you to answer it. How would you define a healthy forest to somebody from the non-consumptive community? If you were to say, to paint a bigger picture, a different picture, they come to you or you come to them, you're having a conversation and you communicate to them the best prescription for this forest is to do some forest management, i.e. logging, timber cutting. It's going to result in a more healthy forest. How would you describe that healthy forest to somebody who would be on the fence with logging and forest management?
Oh, that's a tough one. So I think it depends. So much of it depends on the site, and how it's going to shape up. But I think what I would explain is it would be a system that encompasses everything. So it has a healthy soil layer. So we don't have erosion. Kind of starting with that building block, but it has adequate understory to be able to provide nutrition for, the deer, the turkey, the grouse, adequate umbrella protection for those poults that are growing up, mid-story that could, harbor those mid-story songbirds that are trying to nest in that mid-story, and then, a healthy overstory, but maybe not all in the same area, but, have pockets that, that can encompass all of that. So you've got all of the components of, a healthy forest all within, a relatively short area, so that, turkeys aren't having to take their young, 2 miles down the road in order to be able to raise the brood, but they can, nest in an area, raise the brood right there, and then be able to, kind of live their entire life in that small area, relatively small area. But it would just, have all of those components, relatively close together, and not be spread out, but it would have everything. It would have that understory, it would have that mid-story, it would have that overstory, and it may not be, I just think that's, that having that diversity within that block, having the diversity of tree species that are supposed to be there for that site, having the that all that composition, I think is really really beneficial.
I think when you communicate that to people and you can provide a visual, then it's, I don't know. I mean, it's easy for us to see it and understand and advocate for it. But when you communicate that to somebody, a healthy forest, and it checks all those boxes for different, and I like how you mentioned erosion control, because that's a big argument people make against for logging. And I mean, when done poorly, that's part of it, but checking all those environmental boxes to what a healthy forest is and what it does for the forest and for wildlife goes a long way to communicating that message.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the pieces that gets so often missed, especially on our public land sites. We have some very talented, silviculturalists that are out there, designing these sails. They're going in, they're making sure that the roads are constructed in the right way. They're working with their hydrologist on the forest to make sure that everything's being planned out as best as possible to reduce as much of that, or reduce as much of the damage as possible. And they're planning all these things out in really close detail. They're trying to do these timber sales on public land, especially by the letter of the book. They're trying to do like textbook logging. This is what we have to do, and so I think that's one of the things that you see so often is a lot of people will see, okay, they're doing a timber sale, so that means they're going to go in and just obliterate this block. But this is a professionally designed system. This is that they are going through and designing it professionally. They know what they're doing. They've done it before, and they know how to make all these things work. And I think that's one of the messages that I would really like to see us send better is, hey, this is not just fly by the seat of our pants management. This is planned in detail, and we're taking all the steps and all the precautions to make sure that we're following BMPs. We're actually usually going well above the BMPs. And making sure that what we're doing is protecting the forest, because that's the last thing we want to do is mess something up and have to come back in and fix it later.
Yeah. One question, it's kind of pivoting a little bit, and I don't want to put you on the spot, and I don't want people, the listeners, thinking that you're attacking a community. So I'm trying to figure out how to word this. And what positives and negatives like the deer hunting community have on grouse populations? I don't know how else to word this without getting hate mail. Like the positives aspect of it versus the negative aspects of higher deer populations, because people want to see more deer, for example.
You really are on the just paint me in the corner here, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a deer hunter myself,
Oh yeah, we are too.
Most of what I do, I mean, that's, and I think deer density definitely has an influence on this, and especially on, if you look at a lot of the national forest lands, we held too many deer for too long of a time period, through the 80s, 90s, and then by the time we started really declining those or decreasing those populations, a lot of the damage had already been done. So we're still dealing with a lot of those legacy impacts from overabundance of deer in a lot of the national forest, and so we that it's a little bit of a challenge, because maybe we do need fewer deer in places, but I think the message to the deer hunters is that a lot of what we want is the same thing. Deer hunters want more deer. We want more grouse. The habitat that we would do for grouse is going to benefit those deer. It's going to benefit turkey. It's going to benefit bear. It's going to benefit pretty much everything. It's going to benefit the whippoorwill. It's there's so many species that are going to benefit, that we don't have to just say we're doing grouse management. That's the only thing it's going to benefit. We can do all these things, and it's all going to work. It can all benefit.
Yeah, I asked Mark that same question, because on the other side of the coin, because the deer hunting culture in Ohio is pretty different than the deer hunting culture down here. I think they're both fascinating, honestly, when you start to unpack it. I asked Mark that question because I thought that he and Eric, both being Ohioans, would answer it a certain way, because a lot of deer hunting in Ohio is smaller acreage, so the habitat's really fragmented, food plots and corn piles. So you're less focused on habitat management. You have less incentive to do it. In defense of Virginia, the Commonwealth, the Old Dominion, and us Virginia deer hunters, where I'm at locally, I think, and I don't think a lot of private landowners are intentionally managing for grouse, but because their deer is a vehicle to better hunting and as a result, better habitat, as I mentioned, doing more timber harvests. I think the deer hunting community down here, again, I don't think it's an intentional decision to make decisions for grouse. I think they're doing it inadvertently, but I think here locally, I think they can be a really positive driving force. But I do wish they would shoot more does, for sure.
Definitely shoot more does, but the part that I'm concerned about, and this is, it's deer hunters, it's small game hunters. We're losing hunters in general right now. We're not replacing our hunters, and that's going to cause a lot of headaches down the road. Especially we're already struggling to get deer management or doe management where it needs to be. And if we continue losing hunters, then there's some significant negative impacts down the road, I think, for a lot of species.
Yeah. If you were
definitely that's an issue.
Yeah, if you were a private landowner, Mike, and like myself, and you got grouse in the neighborhood, or if you wanted to have grouse, what are some things you could do, in addition to a timber harvest? What are some habitat management projects you can do as a private landowner to help create an environment for grouse?
Good question.
Yeah. So definitely, the timber sales are a good step. I think one of the big things for me right now is, invasive control, especially things like Japanese stilt grass. That's one of those that, especially, it seems like in the mountains, you touch the soil, you wind up with stilt grass somehow. I don't know how it happens. I don't know where it comes from, but it just shows up. And that is, I think, very detrimental. I think we probably underestimate the impact, especially from a brood perspective. It's hard for a person to walk through it during the summertime when it's really, going good, let alone, a grouse chick trying to move through it. And we know, the grouse hens like to be in a lot of those moist areas during that summertime because it's a little cooler. And that tends to be the same areas where that stilt grass can really get a good, strong foothold in. So that's one that I think definitely is important. Connecting your habitats together, so if you've got a clear cut in one area, making sure that there's good, secure cover between the different habitats. Don't just kind of create that isolated habitat over here and think, okay, I'm doing grouse habitat over here, and I'm doing deer habitat over here, but connect all of it. I think that connection is a big part of it. So daylighting roads, I think, is a great way to work on that. You could definitely look at, installing some drumming logs. So, cutting some, oak trees that, are going to be kind of that basketball size, maybe a little smaller, and just kind of letting those lay and kind of rot on the landscape so that they can, have those, drumming locations. Again, it just depends so much on the system. Anything you can do to diversify your landscape, provide more variety of nutrition. So, planting shrubs, so hazelnuts, chinkapins, crab apples, anything like that you could diversify their food sources, I think is a great move as well.
Yeah. So in Virginia, Mike and Cody, I kind of somewhat know the answer, but just for the listeners, in the Commonwealth of Virginia, who do people talk to like maybe help fund the invasive control, and who are those people that that area can call for help and guidance and stuff like that? Who are those list of people?
Yeah, so it depends on again the situation, but we do have a team of private lands biologists. They can come out and take a look and make some recommendations, provide some some cost share opportunities. Those are done through the local NRCS office. So that's an easy way to get somebody out there and take a look at it, see if there's some opportunity. We also have some district biologists that are able to come out, take a look, provide some recommendations. But also the Virginia Department of Forestry is doing a lot to go out and look at forest stands and help, kind of help you think through it. And, the Department of Forestry they get a lot of those wildlife related calls, and they work with us closely on those calls to, kind of learn, how we need to manage forests based on that wildlife component. So, I would not hesitate to reach out to your local forester and, just kind of talk through, okay, here's what I have, here's where I would like to be. And as always, anytime you're calling in expert help, the first thing that I would recommend is sit down and think about what you're actually trying to accomplish. Sit down and think about, okay, what are my actual goals? What do I really want to do here? And then that way you're equipped once that biologist or forester comes out, what you're shooting for, what your objective is, and then they can tell you maybe some strategies of how to get there. That's always kind of one of those frustrating things when you get to a landowner's property and they just tell you, oh, I want to do good things for wildlife. Okay. That's not really,
okay.
not really helping there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just, kind of think through, okay, what do you want to do? What are your goals? What are you trying to get to? And understanding that, I think is really, the first step.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know how much time you have. So I know you're busy. We know you're busy and stuff. So, one question I want to ask is, Cody and I, we started this, we were a deer hunter project, and we solely embraced ourselves in this Gift for Grouse initiative and stuff. And, we put up a billboard over by Cody, and we had planned on putting another site location and stuff. And as a biologist, I mean, what are your thoughts on stuff like projects like that, like we are doing? And also is, I asked Mark this and kind of think about it. It's like, what can we do for you? Like, what can we do? The Gift for Grouse initiative. What can we do to help you do your job better? Like, to accomplish stuff in the broad sense. And do you see things like the billboard as that, like, hey, it's a grain of sand on the beach. We're realists, but at the same time, that's changing the narrative a little bit. So,
yeah, no, I think it's doing good things. I mean, it's it's putting that message out there. That there's another way to think about these forest management projects. It's providing that mindset to folks that may not have thought about while we're cutting timber that there's other benefits to it other than just the financial aspect. So I think it's a very important tool that you're using, and I'm fully in support of it. The other things that I think people can do is just make comments when these when the Forest Service is trying to do things. Comment, give them support. Help them understand that there are sportsmen out there that are looking for better management. It's one of those deals that when every time they put out a public comment period for some proposed action, the vast majority of comments are against it and it's mostly form letters from out of state or form letters from, other parts of the state. And they're not hearing from the sportsmen. The sportsmen are just silent on a lot of these issues, and just not stepping forward. Some of it, I think, it's just our personalities. I think we like to go to the woods and just be left alone, so we don't want to have to deal with that political reality over here. But the reality is that we're losing the battle because we're not speaking up. And so anything that we can encourage people to get out, speak up, let people know, hey, there's an issue here. And just kind of promote grouse or whippoorwill or whatever species you want to promote that needs these young forests, I think is beneficial.
Yeah, it's difficult. I had a friend that, or let me start over. The Division of Forestry in Ohio put a clear cutting thing on social media, and you can only imagine what transpired from there. And Cody and I talked and stuff, and I mentioned it to him and what have you. And, and Cody worded a comment on it, and it was absolutely fantastic. And that's the thing. It's like even the uncomfortability of commenting, we need to get over. Like, you are going to get beat up. You're going to get hit. You're not going to get canceled. Who cares if you do get canceled? It don't affect us, it don't affect anybody. Yeah. But it's the whole thing that no one likes me. That whole concept. It's human behavior, if you will. But it's just commenting, use educated words and don't say, hey, just don't be a hillbilly about it. Go about it and start fights. But just choosing your words wisely, knowing that you are going to get pushed back. Maybe, but just saying the right things and educating yourself. If you're not educated on a subject, but passionately, don't comment, because that kind of gives us all black eye, if you will. Choose the right words. And Cody did a fantastic job. And I didn't even see if anybody did comment on what you wrote, because those words were just absolutely fantastic. But what you were saying is, speaking up. That's the whole purpose of me talking here is. It is uncomfortable. I mean, we're trying to be advocates of ruffed grouse, and I still get like, man, putting a billboard with logging in Ohio. Yep. I don't know, man. You put that in Akron, you put that in Cleveland, they'll burn it and then find your house, burn that down. So it's just like, it's uncomfortable. We need to stop doing that, man. Because, I mean, you made a comment, and not to drag on here, but we made you made a comment about we're losing hunters. And I heard this stat the other day on a podcast that, how we always used to say, we are the leaders in conservation, sportsmen. We pay for it, right? That is not the truth anymore in the last 2 years. It's shooters.
Yep.
It's the shooting community that's leading conservation with PR, Pittman Robinson, for those that don't know that acronym. But Pittman Robinson, I mean, that is what's leading conservation right now. And that's a huge group of people. It's not the 10% that are anti-loggers. It's not the other percentage of people that are for logging. It's that 60 to 70% of the public that don't know anything about any of it. Those are the people that we need to reach. Those are the shooting community, if you will, that's funding. But we need to reach them, right? Yeah,
absolutely. I think just reach as many as we can, just across the board. I think we can spread the message to wherever we can. And to the billboard idea and concept, that was something that I had thought about several years ago, and it just never came to fruition. But we did a timber sale on one of our wildlife management areas that was right on the road, and it was a pretty good size cut. And so I got a call from my boss's boss, kind of the division chief, and he called me up and said, "Hey, Mike, I just want you to know that I just spent an hour on the phone with this lady who was distraught over this timber sale that you helped plan here. So I want you to know that you owe me for this." But we talked to her about it and helped her understand what was going on. But that was to me, that was a learning experience to understand that, people are so passionately tied to these forests. They're passionately tied to the lands. And, if we message things right, if we talk to them the right ways, a lot of them will understand it. Some of them never will. Some of them never will understand it. But a lot of people, most people, you can talk to and have rational conversations with, and can get them to the point that, hey, they understand, what's being done here, why we're doing it. And I had a former supervisor one time that used to always tell me, as long as you're doing the right things for the right reason, people will generally support you. And so I think that's the message that I've tried to work by is do the right things for the right reasons. And as long as we're doing that, we should be okay.
Yeah. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Sometimes we have to just do it.
Yep.
Hopefully you know what I mean by that. It's just sometimes you just, we're doing this because it is right. And we have science behind us. And unfortunately, there's political science and there's wildlife science. And most of the time, political science wins, right? Yeah, as
sometimes,
you know. Yeah, as you know. And sometimes it's just, it's crazy. But no, Cody.
It's I'm glad you said that, Mike, because it's something that I've talked to Eric for. I don't know whatever happened in the last 2 years, because my personality is not that to be loud, or I don't pick fights, but to be opinionated, that's not my personality whatsoever. But for whatever reason, maybe I'm just bored, need a hobby. But no, in the last year or so, you see all these little things, especially on social media, of people being against timber harvesting, this, that, or the other, and I just, for whatever reason, have felt really compelled to chime in. And I tell Eric this. It's like, and again, it's I'm one person, but the squeaky wheel. I tell Eric, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So you have 100 people chirping about how clear cutting is bad, this, that, or the other. If there's no opposition, then that's who you're going to listen to. That's what's going to get all the attention. So if it's just me, and not that I'm, making a big difference, but if it's just me, if it's just you, if it's just Eric, that one person chiming in, and if you, as Eric said, if you word it intelligently, what we're advocating for, just as you described a healthy forest, and the messaging is very important, but if you communicate it well, what we're advocating for is bulletproof. We're not that they're in the wrong, but we are very in the right. We want healthy populations of wildlife, healthy forests as a result of timber harvesting, healthy economies in rural Appalachia of America. How do you, if you're against logging, in essence, you're against a healthy economy in a rural area, you're against healthy populations of wildlife, and you are against a healthy forest. Tell me why. You know what I mean? So that's what I try to chime in, and best I can say, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. I always reference the State of the Birds report from 2025 that, the disturbance-dependent species are experiencing sharp declines. It doesn't mention grouse or quail, but those are obviously part of it. Songbirds. Disturbance-dependent species in eastern forests, extreme population declines. Birds that rely on mature closed canopy are doing quite well. That has nothing to do with hunting. That has nothing to do with anything other than forest management and wildlife. Argue against that. And then it becomes very black and white. And again, I don't want to ever come across as I'm right, you're wrong, but find holes in what we're trying to accomplish. Healthy forests and healthy wildlife. And when it's communicated well, and especially too, if you can put a visual to it. It's one reason I'm so proud of our billboard is it has a ruffed grouse, which is, the bellwether of forest wildlife, but it's got a very pretty forest scene, nothing destructive or anything, but it's got a flame azalea, a pink azalea. And if you can, I know the three of us can imagine visually what a healthy forest looks like during the spring, full of color, during the fall, full of color. You can hear sights and sounds from birds and bees and pollinators, and then, all the food from hard and soft mass. And it's like, again, how do we accomplish that in 2025? Fire, yes, but more than that, timber harvesting. You paint that picture and say, what do you have against this? And then it becomes very black and white, that it's a very, and again, they're well-intentioned, but they don't like it just because of how it makes them feel. And then that's where we, do our best to communicate why we're doing it. But
it's funny. I seen on a social media post, what's it called that's on our billboard? Flaming what?
Flame
it's
azalea.
orange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying azalea.
But they had a picture of it. Okay. And, and they were promoting the natural forest and all this other stuff. And there was a picture of this thing, and that was the highlight of it. And there was like 800 something likes, and there was all these comments about, oh, this is great, and oh, nature is beautiful. And it'd be great to go into that area and go, all right, let's just go clear cut so we can promote the most, more of this. And people would lose their shit, right? But no, I just read your post. You love this, right? It's like, no, this is what you wanted. That's how we get there. It was a disturbance. That's why it's there. Yeah, it's just funny, but that just kind of proves the point where you only know what you know, and you see that, and that's pretty, but you don't know how that plant got there.
Right.
That's the part we need to work on, if you will. So, but anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I got two more questions to ask you. We'll start with a good. Well, yeah, we'll start with a good one. What is your most meaningful and memorable experience with a ruffed grouse?
Oh, most memorable and meaningful. So I was blessed to grow up with literally grouse in the backyard, right? So we had a little crabapple thicket up behind the house, and probably this would have been early teenage years, and just one of those memorable experiences that I think kind of led to my fascination with kind of the natural world. And I'm not going to say this one moment did everything, but it was a really cool moment that we had gotten a couple inches of snow, and of course at that age, this was pre-cell phones. This was back when we actually had to go outside and find things to do to get in trouble. And so anytime we got snow, my favorite thing to do was just go wander around in the woods and look for tracks, see what's been out there, see what's moving, see where it's moving, and just kind of learn to understand things. And I remember walking up through there and through the crabapple thicket there, and I saw these grouse tracks, kind of along the ground. I thought that's pretty cool. We didn't see grouse there regularly, but every now and then. And then all of a sudden, you saw the little tufts of wings where they had kind of where the bird had flushed up a little bit, and then up ahead there was a little hole in the snow, and I thought, well, that's kind of odd. I've never seen that before. And there was no tracks leading to the hole, so I kind of walked over a little closer, and all of a sudden, just the snow just exploded all around me. And this grouse had snow roosted, and he just absolutely flushed up right in front of my face, and it was one of the coolest moments. I didn't know they did that, and of course, this was pre-Google too, so I couldn't just Google and see why the grouse was under the snow.
Right.
And but it was just a really cool moment to be able to see that, experience that. So
wow, that's awesome. I've only never experienced. I've only read about it. I always joke with Eric. I was like, who is the first grouse that way back when he was like, you know what, guys, what would be a good idea? Let's hang out in the snow for a while. He said, guys, I'm going in. I'm diving in head first. And he gets in. He's like, guys, this is great. Come on in. It was the first grouse that's snow roosted. That's a really cool story. I mean, that's like once in a lifetime. Especially down here.
It's the only time I've ever seen it. So I mean, it's
wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
man. I've read about it obviously, but always wondered just how often they do that. But apparently it's, snow is really important, especially up north, I imagine more so than down here. But to grouse winter survival, really important, snow roosting, where they can get out of the cold, get away from predators. But man, that's super cool. And especially way back when, like you said, because no Google. Right. Now, if it happens, you as soon as you get on your phone and verify, or why are they doing this? Way back when, I bet your imagination just ran wild with wonder,
Yeah.
That's
and
really cool.
and too, if I would have had a cell phone in my hand, I probably wouldn't have even been walking around in the woods trying to figure out what was going on out there. I'd have, found something else to do.
Right.
Or you could have TikToked it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's a really cool story, man. I love that, because we're going to, every guest we have on, we'll ask two questions, their definition of a healthy forest, and then their most memorable experience with ruffed grouse. And it's to hear stories like that is why I want to ask that question, because that's super cool. Mm-hmm. But my last question, Mike, before we let you go, is what is your prognosis for ruffed grouse in Virginia? Optimistically, I know we all know the answer, but realistically, it sounds like there's reasons for optimism, especially on a landscape scale. If we can start cutting some timber, moving some wood on state land. But what are you looking at through your grouse goggles long term for Virginia and ruffed grouse?
So again, it depends on the day. Some days I'm just sitting here wringing my hands trying to think, okay, what's going on? How can we do something? How can we save this bird? And other days I'm feeling like, okay, they're going to be okay. It's going to be all right. But I think, overall, I'm an optimist by, just by my nature. I think things are maybe starting to turn a little bit of a corner. I'm hoping that maybe we've hit that rock bottom. And I think a lot of people are starting to understand that, grouse really are in trouble. And if we don't do something pretty soon, I think we're going to continue to see that slide. We are seeing some, and I think there's more discussion, I think, right now about grouse and more movement on trying to implement some strategies to try to help them than I've ever seen, since I've been in the professional realm of wildlife biology work. So I think there's a lot of movement. I think there's a lot of discussion, and I think if we can channel that in the right ways, then I think we can really see some positive benefits over the next few years. Virginia, I don't know. It's just such a struggle to win that ideological battle. I think that's the one that causes me to beat my head up against the wall the most. Is how do we get the message out to more people that are willing to accept it and not just think that we're out there just trying to be shills for the timber companies or whatever they're thinking, but really get the idea across that we really do care about these birds. We really do care about the ecosystems, and so if we can cross that hurdle, I think that's the big one.
I think we're trending in that direction. I mean, and not to be, I think it's easy to become a prisoner of the moment. And like you said, it depends on the day. When the day the glass is half empty, you're wondering if you'll ever see one again. But as Eric mentioned, think back 10, 15 years ago, how many people were burning versus what they are now. I look at social media, kind of as a barometer with all the Facebook pages out there in 25, 26, those didn't exist 10, 15 years ago. So the information is out there. People are more exposed to it. What they do with that is their decision. But I'm with you. I think it may be, go this way. It may not be a very sharp trend trajectory upwards, but it's moving up. And I'm like you, I'm an optimist by nature, but objectively, I think we're moving in the right direction. Not as quickly as the three of us want to be, but I do think we're getting there incrementally.
Yeah.
And hopefully 5 years from now, we'll have you back on the podcast, and instead of a 3.5 to 4, we'll be at a 6 or a 7 or better for rough.
I was walking down the trail and one hit me. That's what I.
Yep. That'd be nice.
We will certainly do what we can.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
And there are moments, so a couple, I guess, was it 2 summers ago? So we do a brood survey every summer, and we ask our biologists, to kind of keep track of turkey broods primarily. But if they see grouse broods, we ask them to write that down as well. And we actually had one of our management area supervisors that filled up the block on the sheet that we have for grouse broods. And he saw that many grouse broods that he filled up a full sheet and started on the back of the sheet.
Oh, nice.
And so you get moments like that you're like, okay, we're going to be okay. This is, we're just going through a down cycle. We're going to bounce back up. And then there's other moments where, it just, feels like you're losing everywhere you can look. But I think overall, I think you're right. I think we're trending in the right direction. As long as we can keep some momentum.
Yeah. 100%. They're funny. Mark said the same thing, and I've kind of thought this as well. It was refreshing to hear him say it. They are more resilient, I think, than we give them credit for. Mm-hmm. Where I got them, Eric's familiar with it. It's not grouse habitat at all, but they're still there, and it's all the more incentive to give them good habitat. And when there is good habitat for them, think of how well they can do. But
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
well, I appreciate it, Mark, Eric, unless you've got something else to
No,
say.
Mike,
Mike, unless you've got something else to say, any closing thoughts from both of y'all?
Yeah.
No, I just appreciate, it's been very, it's nice hearing a different perspective state-wise, but it's almost a similar stuff, you know? It is. It's a similar, you know, it's not doom and gloom. There is a chance, you know, we can turn this around. And I am, and this is going to come off cheesy, and it's not intended to. I'm glad that there is a Mark Wiley. I'm glad there is a Mike Dye. I really am, because I know your heart's in it. You're going to do the very best that you can to make sure that the species has a voice and can continue being in our future, because you have passion, you know, for it. And that's the part that makes me smile. That I shouldn't have to worry about what's going on in Virginia or Ohio, because I know there's people that are fighting for it. Cody and I can concentrate on other things. That's my point. And thank you, for that. I know that come off cheesy, but that's just, that's where we're at, man.
No, I appreciate you guys too. And I mean, the more people we have that are willing to step up and voice the concerns and to put the message out, the better that we're going to be. I mean, this is really, I think it really truly is, the information that needs to get out, and the better we can do that, the better off we're all going to be.
Yeah,
absolutely, 100%. Well, Mike,
staying silent has gotten us into the place we are now. So, so getting out there and making some noise.
Yeah, if you ever need anything, Mike, don't hesitate, man, to reach out. Text Cody, text me, text both of whatever. We said the same thing to Mark. If you're driving down the road and something comes to your mind, text it, man, and we'll run with it. There's some things that we have the liberty to do that you can't. So, so don't hesitate. If it's bad, we'll give you full credit. And well, Mike said, I'm just doing what Mike said. What do you want?
Yep.
Yell at him. No, thank you. Thanks for coming on again.
Yeah, thanks again, Mike. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, glad to be here. Y'all take care.
Well, we mentioned it. I mentioned it in the beginning, our big pot of grouse stew. Which is kind of a funny analogy, but it makes a lot of sense. You mentioned it in the intro too. All these different perspectives. I mean, the problem is the problem. The solutions, I don't think there's no microwave success or magic bullet or uncovered stone with the magic formula to fix what's going on. It's pretty clear what needs to happen for there to be some positive change. But that doesn't diminish getting other people's perspectives. While the solutions are what they are, how we navigate them or how we can accomplish them, it'll take different perspectives, different opinions, different ideas, and a collaboration. We've mentioned that before, like with the billboard and Appalachian Habitat Association. To do some good work, it's going to take foresters, biologists, a collaboration. We all know what the problem is. We all know what the solutions are. We got to put our collective heads together to arrive at that. And then hearing what Mike said, to accomplish what we need to accomplish here in Virginia, was refreshing. Again, we know a lot of it, but then hearing his perspective on how to get there was good to hear. It opens our minds and challenges us to help us get there.
Yeah, we mentioned in the beginning, a possible, what's a big word for me? Similarity. Thank you. Look at that. Look at me grow. We've come a long way from, what was that word I butchered? Oh my God. Anyway, it seemed like when we asked them both that same question, what can we do to help you? It was advocating and what the problem is. It's like you mentioned, we have these tools, we know how to use them, but we can't use them. We can't use them yet because of the narrative.
Yeah.
The logging, the black eye that it has, that's what we need to overcome right now. Then we can move to the next thing. We got to overcome this. But that was the similarity to both of them. What they were saying is that we need to get the message out. Both of them almost said the same exact words. We need to get the message out. We need to advocate. We need to change opinions. We mentioned in the podcast about controlled burning, how far we've come. Yeah. I know in my heart that we can get there with logging, or at least make it acceptable to, that 60-70% of the public that don't have an opinion on it, so that was the thing. It's like right now we need to get over that hurdle, and that's a big hurdle. Yeah. That is a giant hurdle, and I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it,
yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. It's like both of them said that, and that's what we need to continue working on.
Yeah. It's interesting to me because, you can't advocate your way to saving the species, habitat is the end all be all, but the advocacy helps us achieve that. It helps us accomplish it. And you mentioned there's a quote. I haven't shared this with you yet. I screenshot it September 23rd, a long time ago. And it reminds me of why you and I created the Give for Grouse initiative, and why we just have to incrementally keep moving forward, one foot in front of the other. A river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence. That's how we change the narrative. That's how we move the needle. That's how we invoke change. It's, we're not a waterfall that you do it with blunt force. You wear them down little by little. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you wear them out, man.
Gotta be. And with advocacy, especially, you just have to keep at it, and that's can be deflating, tiring, if nothing else, from your and I's perspective, because you feel like you're saying the same thing or beating your head against the wall. But I say it all the time, every little bit makes a difference. You got to keep chipping away, keep planting a seed. Inevitably it will stick with some people. It doesn't for everybody, but little by little we'll move the needle. And like you said, you look at burning, look at where we were 10, 15 years ago. We're trending. Maybe not as up as we'd like.
No,
we're moving forward.
It's not going down.
Exactly. Hey.
It's not going down.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's one thing I wanted to mention to you before we close here is that, all the stuff that we do, whether it's a podcast, social media, and what have you, and not to sound cheesy or anything, it's all Cody. Cody does the podcast. Can't think of enough to take all this jargon, put it into all this stuff in social media for YouTube and everybody to watch and what have you. But appreciate you all your hard work, Cody, on all this stuff and what have you. And it's I'm too old to do all that stuff, and what I mean by that is that technology driven. And I celebrate words like similarity. You know what I mean? Yeah, look at me. But no, thank you for all your hard work and all this and stuff. And there's going to be a lot more work ahead and stuff and what have you. But no, we'll get there. We'll get there. That's for sure.
No,
right?
I appreciate it. Nobody I'd rather do it with than you. That's for sure.
I appreciate it, man.
We bring a unique skill set, you and I together.
We have a special set of skills.
It is the truth.
That's for sure.
It is the truth. Whatever you do well, I don't necessarily, we complement each other well, as we always have.
Very much so. Yeah, but, well, my wife, I'm sure, is over here listening to us romanticize over each other. She's jealous. She don't like you now.
Well,
she don't like either one of us. Other than that, thanks for listening. Go to, what's the website again? Reference the billboard, Cody.
Billboard is habitatva.org. We are inching ever so closely to our fundraising goal to fund the billboard. Also, leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. We'll send you a free sticker. It's free.
Sticker. Yeah.
Leave us a 5-star review. It helps us grow, helps us reach more people, do more good work, and in return you get, and I said it last time, I will stand on it, I'll say it again. This is the coolest little sticker. Look at all that it says.
Yeah.
Put it on your truck, put it anywhere, put it on your water bottle. You get it for free. Why would you not? Leave us a
Right.
review. You could literally keep
Yeah.
it simple. Just 5 stars and say, good. That's all it
Good
takes.
job.
Yeah.
And donate to the cause, man. Donate to the cause for the billboard campaign. And like Cody said, we're inching closer.
Yes, sir.
But with all that being said, appreciate everybody listening. And as my grandpa always used to say, no hurry, no worry, keep moving.